Swanage is an amazing place full of wonderful people who come together to raise money for this statue, which you'll see very soon. So please enjoy the afternoon, and thank you Swanage, and welcome everyone.
May I now ask Councillor William Try. William has been a councillor in Swanage since 1991. He's also a county councillor, and he used to be the leader of the old Prague District Council for some 10 years. William is going to tell us about the story he uncovered in the first instance, because he was instrumental in creating our trust. Coincidentally, at the same time that William was undertaking his research, a lady in Bournemouth, Elaine Glover of Purbeck Coast Radio, was doing exactly the same. We are also indebted to Elaine, who I'm pleased to say is with us today. William.
Lord Lieutenant, Madam Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, we are here today to take a significant step towards putting right a serious oversight in the historical record and the way in which that record has, until now, been publicly presented. In Trevor Chadwick, we have, and Swanage and Dorset have, a genuine national hero in the best and truest sense of the word. Not only a brave humanitarian, but a selfless giver and helper of those in dire need, who had nothing whatever to gain personally from the life-saving service he rendered and the life-threatening dangers he knowingly faced when doing so. The failure properly to honour him is, I would say, a standing injustice that needs to be redressed, and we come together today to see that he is given some of the long overdue recognition he deserves. The facts relating to what Trevor Chadwick undertook and achieved have been available for decades, and some who have appreciated those realities have indeed tried to make them more widely known. They include Trevor Chadwick's son William, through his book, The Rescue of the Prague Refugees. They include Crispin Sharp, who wrote an item for the Purbeck Gazette in 2015, which sparked the process leading to our presence here today. And they include the efforts of historian Malcolm Feinbaum, who describes Chadwick as the main man in the Prague rescue operation, putting himself in harm's way on a daily basis while interacting with and fooling Nazi officials. Chadwick's acts of bravery and true altruism, says Feinbaum, mean that something ought to be done for the guy who put his life at risk and has never had any recognition for it. But filmmakers, television producers, popularisers of history, and even governments, both in this country and in what is today the Czech Republic, have until now almost always placed elsewhere the recognition and credit for what became known as the Prague Kindertransport. This was the rescue of 669 mortally endangered children confined in that city just before the outbreak of the Second World War. It's taken more than 80 years for the facts to start to be sufficiently appreciated, even by those of us in the Trevor Chadwick Memorial Trust. A dispassionate examination of those facts reveals that Chadwick's role in this operation was critical to its success, and was certainly the most dangerous role, and the most dangerously prolonged one. Yet until now his work has remained largely unnoticed, unsung and unrewarded, with he himself all but forgotten and dying in obscurity of tuberculosis 43 years ago at the not very advanced age of 72. Trevor Chadwick was born in Surrey and came to Swanage to teach in the prep school opened here by members of his family in 1928. He became well liked in the town and was a pub-going companion of lifeboat coxswain Bob Brown. Trevor himself became a member of that courageous group of stalwarts, the lifeboat crew, which is why before the unveiling we cover his memorial in the flag of the lifeboats, or even 2 flags of the lifeboats. But when Trevor Chadwick first travelled to Prague in early 1939, it wasn't to organise a large-scale evacuation of child refugees. In late 1938, having gained the Sudetenland through the Munich Agreement, Nazi Germany increased both its threats to the Czech government and its persecution of the Jews and other minorities in the expanding territory under its control. This helped to prod Parliament into allowing the entry to the UK of refugee children under the age of 17, provided foster homes could first be found for them and a deposit of £50 per child paid by a sponsor to cover a supposed future return journey. It was to collect 2 boys, sponsored by his family, that Trevor made this trip to Prague, although in the event he also brought back a young girl. But significantly, while there, he saw for himself the desperate plight of refugees fleeing from the Germans, refugees who rightly anticipated that they would soon be trapped when Hitler made his next expected move of taking over Prague and the rest of the Czech lands not already handed to him by Munich. So after delivering the 3 youngsters to Swanage, Trevor returned immediately to Prague to volunteer as one of a small group pledged to save as many as possible of the children of those who would be targeted by the Nazis. Most of these children would by force of circumstances be Jewish, whilst most of the rest would be the sons or daughters of known anti-Nazis. Trevor's crucial work over 6 months, right up to June 1939, was at the hazardous end of the Prague to London rescue operation, organising evacuation of the children chiefly by rail from Prague across Germany via Nuremberg and Cologne to the Hook of Holland and thence by sea to Harwich. His now well-known colleague Nicholas Winton was in Prague for 3 weeks until the 21st of January, at which point he returned permanently to England to undertake the important but slightly safer job of looking after the many and the complex arrangements at the London end of that operation. Chadwick's tasks included interviewing frantic parents and selecting the children, a harrowing responsibility when those desperate to leave far exceed places available. Permissions, passports, transit papers and other documentation had to be obtained many times over, as well as the trains themselves organised and the children allocated to them. Just 20 children had been evacuated by the time the German army did march into Prague on the 15th of March 1939, an act of aggression more widely significant because it finally convinced the British and French governments that Hitler was not going to stop at the annexation of areas outside Germany which contained a majority German population, but was set firmly on much larger scale expansion by force. It is testimony to Chadwick's extraordinary skill, determination and persistence that the great majority of children were to leave in a series of trains after the German occupation, when things had become extremely difficult and he was obliged to deal with unpredictable officials, including those of the Gestapo and the leading Nazi in Prague, SS Hauptsturmführer Karl Böhmelberg. Chadwick developed the most effective technique of dealing with them, involving shrewdly cultivating them, then as necessary flattering them or hectoring them to get what he wanted, often appearing to lose his temper but never giving up or giving in. He said, "They gave me an unpleasant time at first. I remember putting on the screaming table-thumping acts and demanding an interview with Bermelberg. When documents could not be obtained, he found a reliable forger to produce them, and when necessary, he riskily cut corners or resorted to bribery of key Nazis and Czech railway officials. It was Trevor Chadwick who would check the children onto the trains and see them off at Prague main railway station, where today stands a statue of Sir Nicholas Winton with grateful children. Of the small rescue group, Trevor Chadwick was the last by 2 months to leave Prague in June 1939, when it had simply become too threatening for a British civilian to remain. A final train of children was about to start its journey when the borders were closed on the outbreak of war, a tragedy which haunted Chadwick for the rest of his days, since it's unlikely that more than 1 or 2 of that train's occupants survived the war. It was in a 1988 BBC television show called That's Life, starring Esther Ransom, that credit for the Prague Kindertransport was publicly laid at the feet of Nicholas Winton, well after Chadwick and other members of the small rescue group were no more. Subsequently, Nicky, as he was known, was showered with a vast array of awards, honours and commendations by the UK, the Czech Republic, the USA and Israel, including the highest honour the Czech government can bestow, the Order of the White Lion. And in 2003 he was knighted by the Queen. He died in 2015 at the venerable age of 106 by a long chalk, the last survivor of the group. When asked why he alone was honoured in this way, he suggested it was due to his still being around when the others were not. But to his eternal credit, he added, Chadwick was the real hero. He did the more difficult and dangerous work after the Nazis invaded. He deserves all praise. Like most of his associates, Chadwick rarely spoke of this time, and over half of those rescued never knew the story behind their survival. Many hundreds of their descendants are only alive today thanks to the Prague Kindertransport. And such was his unassuming nature that if he were here with us today, he would undoubtedly express his thanks to us. But he might well also just ask us to go home and not make such a fuss. I would argue, however, that we have a duty to ensure that those rare and brave benefactors like Trevor Chadwick are not left in anonymity, and that their selfless concern for those in great danger is properly recognised, not just out of gratitude, but also to inspire others in dark times. Finally, I've been asked very briefly to say how this project began. I've already mentioned Crispin Sharp's item in the August 2015 edition of the Purbeck Gazette. In late 2019, I was having a clear out of some back numbers of magazines which I kept for one reason or another, and I soon realised why I had hung on to that particular edition of the Gazette. I thought the matter ought to be taken further under the auspices of the Swanage Town Council, so I discussed it with our then Mayor, Mike Bonfield, and we agreed that I would raise it at the Council's forthcoming meeting on the 27th of January, which is now 2.5 years ago. Moreover, the notion that something should be done was also advocated by Thelma Deacon in the public participation section of the meeting that day. Originally it was intended to mark Trevor Chadwick's achievement as part of that summer's celebration of the 75th anniversary of VE Day, but I'm pleased to say that the case for doing rather more than that developed a momentum of its own, leading to the setting up of the Trust to ensure a most fitting and permanent memorial which is before us today. Thank you all for attending.
Lord Lieutenant, may I please ask you to say a few words?
Well, you could say, now follow that. I've known Bill Crichton for a very long time, and I know how determined he is. And once he gets hold of something, once he gets hold of a job, he does it thoroughly. And he clearly has on this occasion. I've read his writings on it myself, and it's truly amazing what he's found out. And thank goodness someone has brought this to our attention now. Yes, it's a huge honour for me as Her Majesty's Lord Lieutenant, and I say this particularly, if she knew what was happening today, she would thoroughly approve of being represented in this way, because this is an extraordinary thing, which has come to light to most of us very late, to me extremely late. I had no idea that this man had done what he's done. To think that someone went out as a school teacher, understandably to try and save a couple of children, because he had the opportunity to see what was going on and to have the determination and spontaneity to say, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm going back and I'm really going to do something about it. And then to achieve it. That is extraordinary. And to have to do that by all means, saving people's lives, saving children's lives, not balking at bribery if you needed to, talking people around, going around behind, different ways of looking at it and getting people to do what you want them to do, just to save lives, not just. It's extraordinary. 669 people have lived. How many children have they produced in that time? All those people would not have existed. And we can only think that they stayed on, as far as I can tell, until he was well into the, you're really not going to survive this bracket, and then had the blow of losing 200 odd of the children that he thought were going to get through because they closed the borders, which we're not surprised, that was a devastating blow to him. We've all seen the picture of the statue we're about to see later in full glory, and that looks absolutely brilliant to me, incredibly sensitive statue of somebody who cared enough to continually put their life on the line for the future of young people, and was very sad that he couldn't do it for everybody, as anyone who was involved with those things no doubt was, but he was too modest in many ways, perhaps for his own good, because it would have been terrific for the town to have heard about it earlier, but that's the way life goes. Someone gets the credit, someone doesn't. And that doesn't mean that Nicholas didn't do a lot, because undoubtedly he did. But he said he wasn't the hero. He said Chadwick was the hero, and he was absolutely right. Well, specifically the hero. No doubt they were both heroes. Now we have this statue, which Moira Perver has created for us, and I have to say, looking at it, it seemed to say everything that needed to be said about a man who went and did what he did. It's not easy to get a sculpture to say thousands of words, but this sculpture, in my view, does, and it's an extraordinary achievement. So finally, I just say the whole team, the crew, which have been working on this for years, need huge thanks from Swanage, from Dorset, from the country, from the world, for what they've done. And I think we should put our hands together for them and thank them.
Thank you, Lord Lieutenant. I'm sure you will all realise that raising money in recent times has been extremely difficult for several reasons, not least of those the COVID restrictions. We are really grateful to many generous people. In particular, we have just received a sizable donation from the Association of Jewish Refugees, and I'm pleased to say that one of the Association's trustees is with us today. Can you please welcome Mr. Danny Kelvin?
Lord Lieutenant, Madam Mayor, other civic dignitaries, I'm honoured to be here today as a trustee of the Association of Jewish Refugees. The AJR is delighted to be a sponsor to honour one of the lesser-known heroes of the story of the Kindertransport, Trevor Chadwick, who had already demonstrated his altruism, giving his time to support the less advantaged, and doing his rescue work in Prague under the noses of the occupying Nazis. The AJR is today the national organisation representing and supporting Holocaust refugees and survivors and their families. We disperse millions of pounds in social welfare assistance, including from the Claims Conference. So, if you are aware of anyone who might need help, please let us know. Our funding is exclusive to the community we represent and can help to transform lives, enabling people to live in comfort and security with dignity. The AJR is also the leading benefactor of projects and programs for teaching and learning about the Holocaust and its commemoration. We work with leading national institutions and have developed our own resources, such as our own testimony collections, AJR Refugee Voices, where we have over 270 interviews, and My Story, where we have 50 books. The 80 Plus Trees project. This is the 80th year anniversary of the AJR, and we have planted 80 oak trees around the country of where Jewish refugees settled from having left Nazi Germany, Austria, Czech Republic, etc. And we also this year have introduced the UK Holocaust map, on which this statue to Trevor Chadwick will appear. We also run the Kindertransport Special Interest Group, organising a range of activities for Kinder. Previous highlights including having tea with Prince Charles, who has been very interested and very supportive, especially of those who came over on the Kindertransport. On a personal note, my late father and his younger brother were also on the Kindertransport, arriving in the UK, arriving in via Harwich to Liverpool Street Station and then to Sheffield, where I was born and brought up, because they had an auntie there who sponsored them. And they left Frankfurt in April 1939. I also have the honour to lead the efforts to connect, to engage with the next generations, to spread awareness of our activities, and to enrol the descendants who will perpetuate the legacy of the refugees and communicate their stories and act as the next generation of people countering distortion and combating anti-Semitism. Finally, thank you again for inviting me to participate in this very, very special occasion. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. The Ambassador for the Czech Republic, Her Excellency Marie Chapudova, was hoping to be with us today, but has recently sent her apologies as she is having to attend a conference in Prague. However, Her Excellency plans to visit us when she returns to the UK and has recorded a message which we will now play.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to address you today, and I am sorry I cannot share this moment with you in person. It is still difficult for me to believe that nearly 80 years since the end of the worst and the most brutal conflict that the world has ever witnessed, war is once again raging in Europe. But as war brings out the worst in some people, it also brings out the best in others. And it is in the time of war where real heroes are made. We have gathered here today to honor the legacy of one such hero, Mr. Trevor Chadwick. In 1988, the BBC television program That's Life aired live the extraordinary story of Sir Nicholas Winton, who in 1939 stood behind the rescue of 669 mostly Jewish children from Czechoslovakia. Those children would otherwise and almost certainly have found their deaths at the hands of the Nazis. But as Sir Nicholas himself acknowledged, he was not alone. Trevor Chadwick was there on the ground in Prague, arranging the transports of dozens of Czechoslovak children traveling on the Kindertransports to the United Kingdom. There is no other commodity more valuable to a nation than its own people. And we are infinitely grateful to people such as Sir Nicholas and Trevor Chadwick for saving the lives of our children. I have personally met some of them, and I also met the children of some of those that are no longer alive. They are all brilliant. You find scientists, doctors, artists, architects, all professions and different destinies. What a horrible waste for human society if it hadn't been for their savers. It is heartbreaking to read the news about all the unnecessary deaths of hundreds of children dying in the senseless war waged by the Russians in Ukraine, but also in other conflicts around the world as well. Just imagine all the innocent children that have been brutally denied their chance to experience all the beauties that life can bring, not even speaking about the terrible pain of their parents. So I would like to once again thank Trevor Chadwick for all that he has done for them and for us, and also to the Trevor Chadwick Memorial Trust for keeping his legacy alive. I thank you.
I had a call last evening from Paul Walder, or in actual fact it came from one of our group, Josephine Jackson, to say that Paul Walder unfortunately cannot be with us today. Now Paul is the son of Peter Walder, and Peter was one of the first people that Trevor actually brought back to this country. So may I introduce Josephine Jackson, who's just going to read a little statement that Paul sent us.
The sun shines on the righteous, they say. And before I read this, I just wanted to say I've been very involved with appeals to the Jewish community, and I want to thank so many of you who have supported this project. Many others have supported it, I'm not denying that, but the Jewish community have really taken it to the heart, and I am very grateful for that, so thank you. This was sent as referred by Paul Walder. Physical distance, but not memories, separate me from this moment. My name is Paul Walder, and I am the son of Peter Walder, one of the two children that Trevor Chadwick rescued during his first flight to Prague in January 1939. I write these lines with deep emotion and also with great joy for the recognition of the humanitarian work of Mr. Chadwick and the Forest School community of Swanage. Peter was born in 1931 in Vienna and before the rise of Nazism in Germany and the spread of anti-Semitism towards Austria. His father decided to flee in 1935 to Silesia, Moravia in Czechoslovakia. Only 3 years later, after the Anschluss, Kristallnacht and the Munich Agreement, he decided to run away again in search of a safer place. Peter's family arrived in Prague towards the end of 1938, and his father met with Mr. Chadwick in January 1939. On January the 18th, he travelled to England. My father, who passed away in 2007, spent all the years of the war in England, and those were the best years of his life. He forgot how to speak German and Czech, and made English his real mother tongue. He loved England and English culture. Peter had been deeply British all his life, and the Forest School was always present in the stories he told me during my childhood. Peter's father managed to flee in March 1939 to Chile, a South American country that granted him a last-minute visa. After the end of the war, Peter travelled to be reunited with his family. He did his studies there, he got married and died there. But he always felt British, and of that I have no doubt. And like so many memorials in the world that remember the victims and the horror, today we witness the unveiling of a statue to remember dedication, compassion and solidarity. My two sisters and all Peter's descendants and family are excited at this moment and grateful for all eternity to Trevor and the Forest School community. Thank you.
Yeah. Just go the other side.
You'd like to.
I'll hold that for you.
Really amazing speeches. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you very much indeed, Samuel. Apparently his two cousins are unable to attend, but we do appreciate you making the journey. Fantastic. And what do you think of the statue? Absolutely phenomenal. And Trevor's been positioned here simply because he's overlooking Swanage Bay, he's looking out towards Peveril Point, and he's also looking at the old lifeboat station, which of course he helped to man for many years. And you will know that the council have renamed the park next door the Trevor Chadwick Park, and we felt that it was fitting that it was to do with children. I just need to refer to my notes. May I now ask Reverend Tony Higgins, who himself was a member of the Swanage Lifeboat crew, and Rabbi Morris Michaels of the Bournemouth Synagogue to carry out the dedication of the statue.
I may echo the words of so many who've spoken today. It's an enormous honour to stand here and be asked to this dedication of this wonderful statue. Rabbi Michaels and I were having a little chat just before we began the ceremony, and we posed the question, how often will children ask the question, what's the statue about? And I hope they do, and I hope they get an answer which is meaningful, because we live, as was said, in dangerous times. This statue is unveiled at a very relevant time in our history. So we ask and call out to Almighty God. God our Father, we offer you our lives to do your work in the world. Help us by your Holy Spirit to hear more clearly your call, to deeper devotion in your service. Give us grace to respond with gladness for the glory of God. May this memorial remind us of the courage, determination and efforts of Trevor Chadwick to save those oppressed and threatened by evil deeds. We ask your blessing on all who visit this memorial, whatever their faith, that
that they may also be moved to exercise compassion and generosity towards those who continue to flee from evil deeds. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Friends, I'm honoured to be here this afternoon to say a few words on behalf of the Jewish community. This statue, we've heard, is in memory of Trevor Chadwick, but also very much in memory of what he did. There's a Jewish saying, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of a righteous person be for a blessing. A righteous person, a tzaddik, comes from a Hebrew word meaning the right way, the right thing. And there's a biblical verse which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, pursue what is right. The repetition of the word tzedek has many interpretations, but in relation to Trevor Chadwick, I would suggest it implies, even when others perhaps are not pursuing the right way. And in support of that, a quote from the sage Hillel some 2,000 years ago. In a place where there are no men, no leaders, strive to be a man, a leader. Trevor Chadwick was just that. The Talmud, vast compendium of the wisdom of the rabbis of Israel and the ancient world, says, if a person saves one soul, it is as if they had saved the whole world. Trevor Chadwick saved many souls, many lives, and by so doing, saved their worlds, their legacy, all who came after them. Trevor was indeed a tzaddik, a righteous person, and may his memory be for a blessing. But not, please notice, may his memory be blessed, although that of course we would do, but for a blessing. And by this we mean, may all who come to visit this memorial, to recall his actions, to learn of what is the right thing, even when others stand by, may they also be blessed. Conclude with a prayer of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Blessed are you, eternal our God, sovereign of the universe, who has kept us alive and supported us and brought us to this very, very special occasion.
We are really fortunate to have a nationally renowned sculptor living nearby, Maura Perver, to whom we are greatly indebted for creating such a masterpiece that will serve not only to commemorate Trevor's bravery, but also be an important reminder to current and future generations of the futility of war and the suffering that it causes. It is particularly poignant at this time as we see history repeating itself once more. Maura, may I ask you to come forward, please, so that we can all say thank you. And Lord Lieutenant, may I please ask you to make a presentation to Maura.
get there. Slowly. Drag the sword on the end of it.
So thank you so much, Maura. Finally, may I thank you all for coming and for the tremendous support you have given us, without which this project would not have been possible. May I especially say a very big thank you to the team who have worked tirelessly throughout and have been truly magnificent. Also my work colleagues for their fantastic support and their kind and generous natures.